This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
So let's talk about writer's block. Did that rhyme? Focus, focus, focus. Here's a rather sad email that I received yesterday. Hey Austin, I've had writer's block for what feels like forever. I used to write all the time. I entered tons of writing contests in high school, won just about every single one of them, but after getting out of school and trying my hand at being a grown-up, I feel like every ounce of creativity has been completely sucked out of me. I feel like I've abandoned my only creative outlet, and there's nothing left but an empty hole in the pit of my stomach. I want to write, but I can't. I feel like I have absolutely no ideas, and when I finally think of something to put down on paper, I just don't have the energy. I work a full-time job at an oil field. By the time I get home every day, I just want to sit on my couch and play some video games, watch YouTube, read Reddit, and relax. I do not feel like I have the energy to write, but then feel guilty because I stay up until 1 a.m. on my phone or computer, time I could have spent writing, but I can't write until I unwind, and after I unwind, I don't feel like writing. Catch-22, right? Anyway, I feel useless because my brain just can't come up with any good story ideas, and all the articles I've read about overcoming writer's block have been useless. You seem to have the consistency thing down. I'd love to get your ideas on how I can beat writer's block. Thanks. That's weird. How did 19-year-old me figure out how to send emails across space-time? So all of that's very sad. The truth is I get a lot of emails like this, so let's get into it. In my mind, there seems to be two different kinds of writer's block. There's creative writer's block, where you're struggling to find something to write, and then there's the mechanical writer's block, where you're struggling with the actual writing itself. It sounds like this guy is struggling with a little bit of both, which really isn't uncommon. I mean, I have too. Let's go over it. First, creative writer's block. You're struggling with a simple question. How do I come up with ideas? It can feel like every story has been done, and what's worse, done better than you could ever do it, so what's the point? You want to crank out the next great original novel, but you sit down at your laptop, you take a look at the blinking cursor, and you draw a complete blank. Or, as is the case more often with me, you'll have characters but no storyline, sometimes storyline but no characters. Creative blank spots that prevent you from moving forward with a story. It's frustrating because you feel like your inability to dig down deep inside yourself and mine out a unique story is evidence of your complete and utter incompetence as a writer. Okay, sorry, it's getting a little bit too deep. What's wrong with my brain that I can't come up with something good? Well, consider that maybe, just maybe, you're looking in the wrong place. Quit looking inwardly and try looking outward. If you can't come up with any good ideas, try telling someone else's. The best ideas in the world are in the world, so you've got to go out in search of them. And often you don't even have to travel very far. If you're out of story ideas, go visit or volunteer at a senior center, or take your resident grandparent out for coffee. Ask them about their life. You'll be amazed at the stories they've got. Most likely you're young. You probably don't have a lot of life experiences to draw from, so it's no wonder you struggle to come up with a unique story. Why not seek out people who have lived life to the fullest, people who have experienced the ups and downs of every stage of life, people who have stories to tell, but nobody who cares enough to listen. Lend them your ear. Ask them about their story, and after they've told it to you, you'll have something worth telling others. Another great source of inspiration is news, not the annoying, over-dramatized national political stuff that airs 24/7 on cable. Think local. If you need a story idea, something to serve as a creative spark, try picking up a local newspaper. And I know I'm about to sound like a total fossil, but read it. Don't just skim the headlines for something provocative. Even a tiny feel-good story about something in your community could serve as a creative kernel for something greater. If you find inspiration in more tactile or visual mediums, go to a nearby museum or art gallery. Just about every community has them, even if they're on the small side of things, even if it's a museum about the most boring thing you could possibly imagine. Go anyway. Even if it's an art gallery featuring the works of students still in middle school, go check it out. You never know. Pick a painting, pick an installation, write a story about it. It doesn't have to have factual accuracy. It doesn't have to be confined to what's in the frame. Use the source material as a starting point and then go from there. One of the biggest tricks to beating writer's block is to take something from a different medium and transliterate it into words. Speaking of words, it never fails to read. Thinking back to times in my life where I suffered the worst writer's block were times when I had, for whatever reason, stopped reading. Almost every accomplished writer gives the advice to read, 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 always be reading, and there's a reason why. Reading is a way to explore worlds and ideas in a long-form meditative setting. Sometimes the greatest stories come from the most unlikely of places. Go search out literary works or writers that seem on the surface to be the complete opposite of what you'd actually enjoy. Read them anyway. You'll be surprised at the inspiration you get. Like an early 60s Japanese novel about a sailor who meets a widow and her young son while on leave in a shipping port in 20th century Yokohama was not something that I thought I'd be interested in, but 6 months after reading it, I can't stop thinking about it. If all else fails, go to a library. Pick the section that you're most uninterested in. Go to it, close your eyes, grab a book on the shelf, take it out, read it. Who knows what you'll find? Above all, remember that the world around you is full of ideas and inspiration. The cure for creative writer's block is simply to pay attention to the things happening all around you that most folks would normally overlook. After you've got that idea or story, you need to actually return home to write it, and it's at that point that you can run into mechanical writer's block. You've got a story to tell, but you either can't get motivated to start, or you find yourself getting stuck in the middle of writing and unable to continue moving forward. It's common, nothing to be ashamed about, and luckily plenty you can do to overcome it. Stephen King, who has written more pages than probably anybody, has some great advice to get started in his memoir on writing. You can read anywhere, almost, but when it comes to writing, your writing room should be humble. It really needs only one thing: a door, which you are willing to shut. The closed door is your way of telling the world and yourself that you mean business. You have made a serious commitment to write and intend to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. By the time you step into your writing space and close the door, you should have settled on a daily writing goal. With that goal set, resolve to yourself that the door stays closed until that goal is met. If possible, there should be no telephone in your writing room, no TV or video games for you to fool around with. If there's a window, draw the curtains or pull down the shades unless it looks out at a blank wall. For any writer, but for the beginning writer in particular, it's wise to eliminate every possible distraction. A lot of this, as tough as it may seem, is actually great advice. When I write, I use an incredibly underpowered laptop that has just enough processing power to handle a word processor and an encyclopedia if I need to look something up, no internet to distract myself with, no games to take a break with, no social media, and my phone goes on silent and it stays outside of the room. I get distracted easily, so I have to do as much as possible to eliminate anything that might get in the way of my writing goal for that day. I do keep the windows open though. I mean, I find that my head is clearer when I'm under natural light as opposed to this. Our emailer mentioned being so burned out from work every day that he just wants to go home, play games, and unwind. This, again, is completely understandable, but ultimately a habit that you can probably break from. If you're having difficulty getting started, try going a week without doing those things that distract you and instead replacing that time with reading. Believe me, after you have gotten used to relaxing without the video games or the social media feed, it will be easier to transition to something like writing if you're already in a writer's mindset. We often tell ourselves that surfing the web or playing that video game for a few hours, that it helps us relax, but it might be surprising to learn how much of those activities actually do the opposite. Instead, actually filling our heads with constant useless noise that further fries our brains and only wears us out more. When we make a deliberate effort to put those things away and instead replace those activities with something more meditative and quiet like reading or writing, it's not uncommon to find yourself feeling creatively refreshed and energized. Some writers spend thousands of dollars on retreats where they put all electronics away, escape from the constant barrage of information, and focus on a single story. The truth is, you can do the same for free, just by closing the door. I write in the mornings, so I've had to learn how to clear the fog and get energized and do my writing while the sun is up. To do this, I make sure to get to bed at a decent hour. I get up at a specific time, I take a shower to wake myself up, I eat a healthy breakfast to make sure that I can maintain energy throughout the day. Then I go to my writing place. I close the door and I get to work on that day's goal. It sounds childish, it sounds fundamental, so very basic. It's advice they give you in grade school, but it works. Now, here's the thing. I don't like going to bed and waking up early. I don't like eating breakfast, but I do it anyway because it's the best way to generate and maintain energy. If you want to overcome the mechanical issues of writing, you've got to take care of yourself. Creating a routine isn't always fun. It's almost never easy, but I've found the better I treat my body, the better my mind works. Maybe like this emailer and most of us, you work a 9 to 5. You finally get home, maybe settled in at 6 or 7 o'clock. That still affords you several hours to write. You can learn to make those hours count when you give your day structure and get your priorities for the day straight. Some people write best in the morning, some people write best at night, but whatever the case is for you, develop a schedule and plan to maximize the hours that you're most productive. Once you have removed distractions and once you have figured out your routine, starting becomes way easier. But what if your problem isn't getting started, it's getting stuck? Look, it happens. You hit chapter 4 and then all of a sudden it's like, I have no idea what to do next. Something I do that always seems to help is pull the camera back. I take a look at the overall picture. I ask questions like, where am I in the story? What did my protagonist want in chapter 1? How close are they to getting it? What character flaw was exposed in chapter 2 that created a problem for chapter 3? What can I do in chapter 4 to raise the stakes so that they can find a way out in chapter 5? Is my story over? Maybe the story is done and I don't need to continue. Not every story is a novel after all. If you don't know what should happen next, you might try introducing a character that acts as a foil or opposite to the character that you're stuck on. Maybe you should put a time break in the story. Or my favorite solution, skip what you're stuck on and head to the next thing that you can visualize. On the small scale, if you're stuck on a particular word, maybe you can't figure out the proper adjective to use, just put a blank. Or a word that's close to what you're looking for in brackets and then continue from that point as if the roadblock hadn't happened. On large-scale problems, like you need 2 characters in a room for a scene that you're really excited about in chapter 7, but you can't figure out how to get them there in chapter 6, just write chapter 6, character A and B are reunited, and then just head over to chapter 7 and write the thing that you can't wait to get to. It can be hard for some writers to avoid perfectionism, but the sooner you realize that your first draft is just a loose sketch of a full painting, one that will be developed and cooked over time, you'll free yourself of the unnecessary pressure of getting it right the first time. If all else fails, you could always just shelve the story that you're stuck on and come back to it at a later date when you have more inspiration and more experience, but only shelve the story if you've resolved to work on a new or different one in place of it. The stories can change, but tell yourself that the mechanical act of writing should never stop. Writer's block stinks, but there are ways to overcome it. I mean, I go through bouts of writer's block myself. It's never fun, but when you approach the art of writing like you would any other practice, remembering that it is a muscle to be built and strengthened and at the very least maintained over an extended period of time, and that sometimes the workout changes, but the end goal is always the same, you'll put your temporary struggles into perspective and you'll find ways to overcome them. I hope some of these ideas have helped. If you've got your own advice, feel free to leave it in the comments. good luck. Once you're back on the saddle, creatively speaking, you'll probably want some place to put your masterpiece, yes? In that case, you'll need a website, and you're in luck because this video's sponsor, Squarespace,
Has tons of beautiful templates and lets you customize them to your liking with an easy-to-use interface. Using their simultaneous posting feature, you can link your site to your various social media profiles and get your creations seen across all major platforms with the click of a button. Audio blocks make starting and maintaining a podcast super convenient. They even make it easy to set up and manage an online storefront if you have something to bring to market. If you've been waiting to start a website, now is the time, and I'll make it even easier by hooking you up with a special discount. Go to squarespace.com to start your free trial. If you like the experience, then when you're ready to launch, you can go to squarespace.com/AustinMcConnell to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.